so years, and more aggressively the last. So a second agent. So two, okay, my left, and in fairness to them. So, welcome to the fourth episode of Deconstructing the Matrix. To my left on your screens is a long-term friend of mine. His name is Sam, and he is in the healthcare field like all of us are, but that's exactly not why I have him on here. I have him on here because he has a belief structure, and I have a lot of respect for his opinions. I've worked with him and known him for a long time, just as I've worked with Will and known him for a long time. And I have these guys on here because I respect their opinions a ton. And I didn't want to talk about healthcare. I wanted to talk about faith, religion, and all things encompassed. Sam describes himself as a Christian, and Will describes himself as an atheist. And I'm just going to kind of give them a couple seconds to explain that real quick.
You want to go, Will, or you want me to go first?
I can go.
Yeah.
Atheism. I say I'm an atheist mainly to normalize the term, even though I feel comfortable saying that. Whether it's agnosticism, it's also, you can kind of fold that in. I use atheism as a term that I don't believe in a God, and I'm not going to just say I'm an atheist, there is no God. All right, it's more nuanced than that. So the way I like to describe it is that as an atheist, I haven't seen, or I haven't been presented with any evidence to convince me that there is a supernatural God, the God of the Abrahamic religions. So it's more nuanced than just saying there is no God, which can cause some problems if you enter into a conversation, and it can kind of devolve into this never-ending circle of arguing. So that's my take on atheism.
Awesome. Sam?
Yeah, so I'm going to change it up on you a little bit here. I would call myself a Christ follower. Reason being is, anytime you say Christian, you get lumped in a group, good, bad, or ugly. So I would say first and foremost, I'm a Christ follower. And yeah, so I think I do believe in God. So you want to say supernatural being, higher being. Yes, the God of the Bible is the Bible that I believe in, but it's kind of really to me, in the way it works in my mind, it's kind of in a step down or step up. But obviously as a theist, I would have to believe in a God, and then you have to figure out, okay, who is this God? And to me, Christianity describes that best. So I'm a Christ follower. Call me a Christian, but I guess that's how I would probably describe me as a Christian. I like calling myself more of a Christ follower than just a Christian, whatever that is.
Awesome. And myself, I would describe myself as the closest label, I guess, would be agnostic. And the reason I say that is because I think that the preponderance of evidence that I have investigated throughout my lifetime has given me the opinion that it is much more likely that a God doesn't exist in the way that people think it does than it existing that way. And I'm talking about the monotheistics or even the polytheistic ideas. Now, spirituality is a whole different ballgame, but I don't really get involved in that because it's so nebulous. So my next question to you guys is, I watch these podcasts all the time. I watch debates, not just on religion, but other things, other topics. And I wonder to myself, I say, self, would is there anything that could be said in this discussion that would make the other person actually agree with the other guy? So I'm going to put that to you guys. Is there anything that we could say in this next hour and a half to 2 hours that would allow you to maybe change your opinion?
I'll go first. I mean, I use the word evidence in my description of atheism, and so therefore there may be some evidence that someone could show me that would change my mind, that would have me believe in a supernatural God, the God of the Abrahamic religions. What that evidence is, I really do not know, because I'm always a skeptic. And if there was something that broke the laws of physics, or it was just so unbelievable, I mean, it would really have to rock my world, the natural world, for it to convince me. And even then, I would think maybe someone put something in my drink, or this. I'm having a stroke, because reality is just kind of what's in your brain and how you interpret things. So I would still be skeptical, but I would assume that there would be some evidence that someone could show me that would have me become a theist. And quick side note, I was a believer for a while, like from age 7 until maybe my early 30s. I kind of slowly faded away from it. I remember vividly the feelings of believing in a higher being, a Christ follower, as you call it, Sam. I was a good Christian kid. I absolutely remember the feelings I got. So for evidence to come my way, and then it's those feelings as an adult, it's probably still wouldn't be enough, because brains working the way they do. But I'm sure there's something again that just absolutely broke the laws of physics and space-time that, yeah, it could get me there. I do have an open mind about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would say I'm open to ideas. Christianity does have a defeater, within itself, right? So the Bible does say that if the resurrection is not true, if the resurrection can be proven not to have happened, then everything that we believe, my Christianity, my belief as a Christ follower, would be futile. It'll be interesting for me, to be honest with you. It'll be interesting to see if that does happen. Although I won't be a Christ follower, it'll be interesting to me to see how my belief would be still in a supernatural being, right? Would I be a deist, right, versus a theist or a Christian, right? So would I still believe in a higher power because of some of the other evidence that makes sense to me to believe in a creator and a supernatural power versus Christianity. So yeah, I mean, I think as a Christ follower, if the resurrection is not true, then I really am not justified in having that faith. It's not reasonable for me to have that faith. So I would definitely leave that faith or leave that line of thinking.
So suffice it to say that ain't happening today, because I left my anti-resurrection laser in the car. So
Good.
All right. So question. Would you guys say that your belief structure is a search for the truth, or would you say it's more based on how you came up and you just don't want to let those traditions go?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. So I think there's difference for me personally. I think in the beginning, for me was, you grew up that way, right? I grew up Catholic, went to church. My buddies, came here to America. They went to church. It was more of a hangout. Really didn't learn anything about the faith, or, I really wasn't practicing it at all. I just went to church because that's where my buddies hung out. So I think it was just, monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. I think it probably only when I got into my 30s, just some things happened. And I think, as you become an adult and with family and stuff like that, you're like, okay, you know what, where am I going? Where is my anchor? Where, how am I going to see this world? And then I started searching, and I got into, this little it's called apologetics. So, just kind of really figuring out why I believe what I believe. And in all honesty, in going through it, I could truly say I did not want Christianity to be true. Like, I do not want it to be true.
What do you mean by that?
So I don't like, so Christianity or being a Christ follower, for what it entails, like, Will, you kind of know this because you kind of grew up with this. It's you really have to die to self, right? You have to say no to yourself and follow a higher standard, a higher being. And that gets in the way of just, wanting what I want, when I want, how I want it, to be honest with you. I tend to be selfish and, prideful and all the above, right? And so my faith is not conducive to that, right? So if I could say yes to all those things that I want, but I have to lay those aside and follow the truth, which is being a Christ follower, which is Christ, which is God. So to me, like, and you see some of these guys, I don't know, everybody's different, but, you see them on the internet or talking, on how Christianity has done this and that. And I think to a certain extent, it has helped me in certain instances in my life. But to be honest, if I'm being really honest here, yeah, man, it gets in the way. Like, and I think during that search, I came in where I really did not want it to be true. That's why I watched all these debates, and I was just hoping for, like a knockdown argument. In all honesty, there hasn't been, like, for me personally, there hasn't been a knockdown argument on either side, right? It's not like, 100% all this. I think, to me, I definitely lean towards there is a God, because I feel like there's more evidence there. Am I 100%? Probably not, right? I'm definitely not 100%. I could say that, but I feel like I am reasonable and justified in holding my position and believing in God. But yeah.
So you would say that it is a search for truth. Like, you feel like you're on the path to truth.
Right.
Okay. Right. Will?
Sam, what percent? You say you're not 100%. What percent would you put your belief at?
I mean, it's so hard to quantify. I mean, you pick a day, it could be 51%, and on some days it could be like 83.6%. To be, I'm being facetious, but I have doubts. I really have. Sometimes I have some doubts. Like, I'll be listening to something or hearing something, and I'm going to say some Christianese stuff here, but like, sometimes my flesh gets in the way, and I want to do stuff that I'm like, well, I know I'm not supposed to be doing, or I'm not, and so sometimes I'm like, I can't do it, or I want to do it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely have doubts from, I wouldn't say day to day, but, I definitely have some doubts where, I have some ups and downs. I don't think those doubts come as much, and they're not as severe, just because I feel like the more and more I know about why I am a Christian, the more and more you study what the Bible is and what it's not, just all the evidence that for God, and then the rebuttals against that, just all of that. I feel like that kind of secures up here. Like, okay, you know what? I think I know, I feel pretty reasonable. I feel pretty confident, right? That I am where I'm supposed to be, right? I am thinking right. I am justified in believing that there is a God. So, but yeah, from day to day, it fluctuates.
All right. So you feel like you said you are on a journey of seeking truth, I guess you're in a better place now than before you were searching. Would you say
In
that?
what ways? Like in what ways? When you say I'm
It's
in a
worth
better
it.
place.
It's worth denying the flesh to be a Christ follower and continue on your journey.
Yeah. So to me, right. So I'll give you an example, right? I mean, I have 3 kids, 3 teenagers, and um, part of and again, this is my personality, right? So part of my flesh is to to be prideful. Let's say if I spoke to him in a certain way or done this, that, or the other, um, my initial reaction is to be, prideful. I'm the father. I'm this, and that, and the other. I provide all of this, and and act that way. But then, I'm reminded how what Christ has done, right? So I'm reminded of my faith and what Jesus has done. So I'm like, okay, well, so if this guy had, he's all powerful, he could have done everything and anything, and he could have been justified in doing that. He laid down his life, he humbled himself. I surely can do that, right? And so, yeah, I have to go back to my kids and, be open, honest, and transparent and say, look, the way I acted is not right. I was prideful, and here's how I was prideful. So I had those conversations with them, and I have to apologize and ask for their forgiveness and humble myself because I was wrong. I think for me personally, so whether I do that with my kids, with my friends, with my wife, yeah, I think in those, right off the top of my head, in those instances, that has helped me. Now, am I perfect in that? No, right? Absolutely not. And I fail literally day to day. But I think I try to be as consistent as possible in going back and saying, hey, you know what? I've done X, Y, and Z. I've made this mistake. And I shouldn't be doing that. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. So on and so forth. I think Christianity, for me, in believing that is consistent with what I'm believing, if that makes sense, right? For me to do that is consistent with my faith, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, my so to be an atheist doesn't really give you a set of a structure on how to live. It just means you don't believe in a supernatural being. What I am is a secular humanist, right? So there's a ton of overlap between secular humanism and Christianity in your case. So to be a secular humanist means the secular part means non-religious. The humanist part means you want to improve humanity in whatever way, little or big. You just want to help your fellow humans, your society. You want to leave it a better place when you're gone, basically. So I do that with a secular mindset. All right, not for a reward, not to avoid hell, but because I genuinely want to help my fellow human beings. So similar journey, right? It's just that I'm not taking my cues from Christ. Now, somebody could kind of parse my life and say, well, if you didn't grow up Christian, you developed these morals as a kid, and that therefore it's still Christ's influence on your life now. Mm-hmm. We could have a conversation about it, right? There's no way to prove or disprove that, but it is who I am now. All right, secular humanism. So that's what I do in my day-to-day life, but I feel less burdened in my day-to-day life. Right, these sins of the flesh or things that are considered sins in the Bible have no sway on me. They don't give me heartburn. Because and again, I don't believe in karma either. It's just that I'm doing good on this earth, and it's not like, oh, I'm doing good, so therefore I can masturbate, or I can get drunk tonight. It's not like I'm not trying. I'm not. It's like I'm earning it. It's just that it's not. They're not sins to me. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm being responsible, so I can enjoy the pleasures of the flesh, as the Bible says,
Right.
describes it. And you're right. To be prideful, to be overbearing to your kids or whatever. Yeah, it's. I'm not going to call it sin, but it's not good to do. But if you recognize it, yeah, I've had those same conversations with my girls. They're a little older now, or they're young adults, but yeah, you feel bad, you feel sorry for something you said or out of anger. Yeah, I've done those same things, but again, because I recognize that I hurt my girls or I did something I should not have. So that's just kind of the take. That's from my take. You call it, Mac, you called it a seeking the truth. For me, it's just day to day trying to make this world a better place.
So
Okay.
can I?
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
ask you a quick question? Well, so, and I think I've talked to Mac about this. So, like, I understand your position where you're basically saying, look, I basically what you're saying. Like, I read this. It says improving humanity, help make it a better place, and I think any Christian would probably agree with that, right? I would be stupid not to. So I think I agree with all of that stuff. I think where I would want to not even understand even more, right? Not question or this gotcha moment is the fact that to me, it's the consistency in your logic and the thinking, right? So I guess to, like, then I'm going to ask, as a humanist, why do that? Like, so what, I guess in my head, to my weird head is like, if there is, this higher standard than me, right? Because if there is no higher standard than me, and this is my thinking again, right? I'm sorry, correct me if, I don't know if this is a humanist thing, but my thinking is, if there's not that higher standard, which is a perfect standard, right? Everything else is whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is a preference. Everything else is whatever I deem it to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I think it's good to steal 3 paper clips, but not 4, guess what? That's my standard. So therefore I'm good, right? So therefore I'm okay. I guess from a humanist perspective, how do you, again, I'm not questioning because I'm really wanting to, just to understand,
Mm-hmm.
how do you avoid the slippery slope? Because in my mind, if there is, obviously if there's a perfect standard, right? So, it's clear cut. Everything else to me becomes arbitrary, right? It's big, wherever you want to draw that line. How do you combat a slippery slope of moral decay,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense? And
Absolutely.
not to say, oh, look, if you don't believe in God, you can't be a good person. There's a ton of people. There's actually people who don't believe in God that are probably acting way more moral or better than a Christian. So I'm not saying that, but to me, from a logical point of view, everything becomes arbitrary. And how do you avoid that slippery slope into a moral decay? Or maybe it's a loaded question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you partly answered it with your realization, or the acknowledgement that you don't have to have religion to be a moral person. That permeates this country. I don't know other countries because I don't live in them, but that permeates this country, and it really, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it annoys me. It disappoints me how many people actually, to their core, believe that. So they think, okay, there's a bunch of Christians and a bunch of atheists. These atheists are going to slip into this moral decay, as you describe it, which I think is a great description.
Right.
But we Christians have these stopgaps. We have this anchor that will prevent us from sliding down. I reject that. It's been looked at. This one has been looked at worldwide, right, and actually nationwide. If you just want to stay in the objective world, on objective grounds, there have been plenty of studies that show that United States that tend to lean more secular versus Bible Belt states. Most metrics you're going to find that are better as far as healthcare, literacy rate, teenage pregnancy, murder rates, corruption in politics, any objective metric that you can measure. Secular states in these United States do better, and secular countries around the world actually do better in these objective metrics. So there is evidence, all right, and this is evidence that has been gleaned for 50 years, 100 years. I don't know how far they go back. So it's not just like snapshot. It's a chunk of time. So that's objective. And I know in the conversation, objective.
I would say more objective.
You what?
I would say it's more objective. You know, when you say it's objective, it gives it an absolute. And I would
objective. Point taken. Yeah, it is a more objective. Is more objective evidence to push back against this argument that atheism or humanism, secular humanism, tends to slip into moral decay. So there is evidence against that.
Right, so
anecdotally, the people I hang out with is mainly secular humanists, atheists. It's a great group of people. No group of people is gonna. Every group of humans is gonna have malcreants and saints and good. Sorry,
right.
people that do good. So it's in all groups of people. But I totally get what you're saying, because again, I grew up a Christian. I know these feelings. I know that you worry about that, but at the root of all this anxiety that people have, most people have in this country, is that if you don't have religion, you cannot be a good person, or if you are, you can slip easily. So I reject that personally, just subjectively and objectively. I reject it, and I feel comfortable doing it.
Right. So, well, I'm probably going to agree with everything you said. One, I really don't know the metrics, but I'm gonna give you those, and I'm gonna agree with you with those. That's really not the nuance of my question, because I do agree with you. I don't think you have to be a Christ follower or a God believing person to be good, right? I think you could have that. My question is, I guess in my mind, it doesn't seem to be consistent thinking with a secular humanist thinking and the reason being is because, again, the standard that you hold as a secular humanist is going to be different than, the other million people that may be holding the same thing, or 2 million, or however many people, right? So because there is no objective, to me, I would say perfect standard, right? That there has to be the ultimate standard. Everything else, to me, in my mind, is arbitrary. Where do you draw the line, right? And so, again, I guess what I'm saying is, are you, in my mind, and I want someone to tell me otherwise, because again, I want to see the other side. In my mind, yes, a secular humanist can be good, whatever the term is, however we want to describe that, right? Can be a good citizen, can be all that. That's not what I'm questioning. What I'm questioning is, or I'm trying to understand is, I don't think you're being consistent with what you truly hold, if that makes sense. Because if what you truly hold and you take it to its end conclusion, it's not consistent. It seems to me it's not consistent with your beliefs. That makes sense.
I'd like to jump in and contribute, because there's a couple things I want to clear up. First off, I was raised a Catholic, so I wanted to clear that up, because it sounded like Sam may have thought that I wasn't when he mentioned that Will was raised in the church. So yeah, I was raised a Catholic, and both my parents, my mother more so than my father, are still believers. I think certainly my mother more so than my father. But the second thing is, it sounded like both you guys were saying that it's more burdensome to be a believer than a non-believer. Just a show of hands, do you guys agree? Is that what you feel?
I would say, is it inconvenient? Yes, and sometimes it is, but I wouldn't say it's just overall it's burdensome. That's not what I would. That's not how I would describe it. I know I might have come off like that, but to me, my beliefs, me being a Christ follower, in certain instances in my life can be very inconvenient, and I wish it wasn't true.
Burdensome? You mean in my everyday life? No.
Well, you said so. Sam said, yeah, he wishes it wasn't true because he's got to act a certain way. It's kind of like a burden because he's got to be more Christ-like, and that's what I took from it. It was harder, and you as well. You were like, yeah, well, I feel free because I don't have to.
No one's watching over me.
I can masturbate, right? So.
I did say that. Hey, but there is a burden out in the real world because I can't, Sam can wear a cross on his neck. I can't wear an atheist symbol. It's gonna be where my burden, the burden I have to bear is out in the real world.
You can make your own symbol. Anyway, let me get to the point. Yeah, I feel like it's clearly less burdensome to actually be a believer, and that's because of the way that I think that religion came about. A lot of my background is in psychology, my early undergrad background, and my thought process is that man created religion and not the other way around. And the reason he did it was a necessity. It was because he had to explain the reason why all these things were happening that he perceived to be out of his control. And in doing so, creating this, initially it wasn't a monotheistic thing, right? And with humanity, it was more polytheistic, right? The God of the sun, the God of the ocean, the God of water, right? So there were many gods to explain, the many catastrophes, right? Floods and famine and burning
bushes.
Yeah, not bushes. Burning crops. So they had to explain this stuff that's out of their control. So man, in my opinion, had to create these things to help him better understand his world. And it made it easier because now a lot of the things that happen in your world, you don't have to take responsibility for. So I feel like you're actually unburdened, and it makes life easier to just be like, well, God has if your son gets murdered, or God has a plan, right? So it's easy to explain a ton of things away because you don't have to really do anything to investigate them or understand them or do anything about it. So that's kind of the first point.
I'm gonna have I need to make a point about that, but that's your first point.
Okay, well, go ahead, make your point, and then I'll come back.
So this is the easiest. I think to me, this is what they call the genetic fallacy. So
you said genetic.
Say that again.
You said genetic fallacy.
It's a genetic fallacy because it doesn't matter how we arrived at the conclusion. So, for instance, let's say I have a 3-year-old. I put this astronomical physics equation in front of him or her and say, let's say the answer is 5, whatever, right? And the kid looks at it and in his own little mind, he's like, well, I see a bunch of this and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, you know what? I like this letter and let me just subtract this and this. And they're going to look at you and say, well, the answer is 5. Well, the answer is 5, right?
Yeah.
So because he thought in a different way, you're like, dude, you didn't even come close to thinking the right way. But you got the answer right. Does that negate the answer being right? No, it doesn't. He still got the answer right. So even
But that's not the same thing. So
that is the same thing, because really,
No,
to me,
because-
what you're saying is the way God was, the way we got to believing in a God is this way and this way and this way. And if we got there that way, then we really shouldn't believe in God,
no,
which
but
is
you're
fine.
missing.
But the thing is, to me, you have to go and see, is what we are believing, is it true? It doesn't matter how we got there. Is it true? Yes or no? Does that make
But
sense?
you're missing the fundamentality of what I said. I said man created God, not the other way around. So regardless of, let's say we agree that God exists, regardless of whether or not we got there the wrong way. My point is that, most people who believe in God say that God is the creator of all things. Well, if man created God, then God didn't create him. So that is not a logical fallacy. That is an impossibility with respect to one creating the other, not the other creating one. Does that make sense?
Right, but I think, to me, that my analogy still holds, right? Because if that kid goes in there and he starts creating some weird little formula of his that really is not for that physics problem, right? He created something out of his head that you're like, you know what? No, this makes sense to me because of this way or that way. But he comes to the actual answer, the right answer. Then you're like, well, the answer is still the answer. So I understand. Let's say we did create God and this and this and that. Fine, right? But my whole thing is that doesn't prove or disprove if there's an actual super being or there's a supernatural being. You still haven't disproved that. Does that make sense? You just said how I got there, which is fine, but you have to still disprove what I'm believing, which is, well, okay, we know how you got there, fine, but is there a God? Let's really look at the evidence or did some deductive reasoning to see if there is a God.
Well, let me finish and then I'm gonna let Will take this.
All right, go ahead.
So I still think you're missing the fundamentality. If you believe that God is all powerful, omnipotent, and created all things, then it's impossible for him to be created by man, which is what I believe. I believe man created God out of his own consciousness.
Are you saying they actually created a God or the idea of God?
The idea of God. The
Right,
concept.
so they created the idea of God. That has
Yeah.
nothing to do with God being who he is.
Right, but we believe it, right? You're a human being, I'm a human being, and their traditions get passed down. All those traditions get passed down, right? So if your mother believed in God, the high likelihood is that you're going to believe in God. So those traditions get passed down. Now, whether or not my point isn't to prove you wrong or to, I'm just expressing around you guys the way that I think that God came about. And it's not this supernatural being. I believe that he was created by man to help man understand the trials and tribulations of his existence. Will, I'm gonna go ahead and let you jump in if you have anything to say about this.
Yeah, let me summarize what y'all are saying. I've been taking notes myself. So Mac is saying that it's just go back to our hunter-gatherer days, right? 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. That I also want to go back to what you said, Sam, about the question you were posing to me about this high standard. And it actually, Mac kind of said the same thing, and I'll crystallize it here, that this high standard that is the anchor, I forgot the term you described, but that is a projection from man to an imagined God, an imagined religion, that standard. That's what Mac is saying, and that's kind of what I believe as well. When this happened, 20,000 years ago, 15, we don't know. We don't have those historical records, but Mac is saying that this concept of God, religion, was projected from man, made from man, and they projected this being, the idea of this being, and that's what happened back in the hunter-gatherer days, before written history. So I believe that as well. Now, what Sam is saying is that, hey, this let's just say, for the sake of this argument, all that happened back in the hunter-gatherer days, but it was because there was some weird shit going on. There was really some supernatural stuff they couldn't explain. We being the child in front of the physics problem, we said God, and there's actually a God up there there was a God back then, there's a God now.
Yeah, I got that.
Right. So
Yeah, I got that.
for me, I need the evidence of God for this argument that, and I'm kind of going back to what I said initially in the first part of the podcast, is that I would need to see evidence of a God. The burden of proof is on theists to prove that there is a supernatural God. Now, personally, I like, again, the supernatural God of the Abrahamic religions. It's for me, it's a myth. But is there a fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional being out there, worlds out there that we have no access to because we're third dimensional beings? Our minds, our brains are puny. Is there something, a higher level out there that maybe is affecting us, that we can kind of we can feel reverberations of, and maybe that's what we're feeling as far as spirituality? Maybe science, physics says that, yeah, there are multiple dimensions. So if there are dimensions, maybe there's other stuff out there. We just have no access to it at this point. Is there something I can plug into to feel better? Maybe an energy of the universe. Again, the spirituality. I'm not going to discount that. It seems a little bit more based in reality. But is there a supernatural being that's looking down on me or answering prayers of believers? That's where I'm going to need to see some proof besides a book written in the Bronze Age.
Awesome. All right, let's kind of switch reels a little bit. So a reason that I made this podcast is because I am very disheartened about the direction that America is going, and I think that American democracy is at a tipping point, and I'm not optimistic about it. So my question to you guys is how important is it that we really determine if God is real or not? For example, in dealing with these problems that we do have in America, is the solution more likely to come from a religious perspective, or is the solution more likely to come from a secular perspective? Why don't you take it away, Sam?
Yeah, so I remember when you gave that question. Obviously, your worldview is it's going to really how you see the world, right? So it's these assumptions and the assertions that you have through which you look through the world, right? So if you're a Bible believer, or if you're a God believing person, right? If you believe in a higher deity, I'm a Bible believing person. That's my worldview, right? So that in your worldview tends to, you really want to answer the big questions, right? Origin, meaning, morality, destiny. I mean, those are like the four biggest questions that you have to answer. And so each worldview has to be able to answer those four questions, whatever worldview it is, right? And then, you have to figure out, okay, I answered those questions. Do they correspond to reality? And are they coherent? Do they make sense? I mean, obviously, I'm a Christian, so I think they all fit the bill, right? I mean, Christianity talks about origin, meaning, morality, destiny. And in my opinion, it corresponds to reality best, and it's coherent. So you take that worldview, and I think, to me, so that worldview, right? Whether you're a naturalistic atheist, right, or secular humanist, whatever, that's how you're going to see the world. That's how you're going to see how to solve certain problems in the world, whether it's government, social, local, on the local level, state level, whatever. So I think, to me, when you ask that question, to me, that is the ultimate. I wouldn't even want to say one of the most important, because then it makes other things important. I would say that is the only important thing you have to ask is, what worldview are we coming from? Because that's how we're going to treat our fellow man, right? Through that worldview. So obviously, to me, when you get into, Should we look at the world from a secular point of view, or the social issues from a secular point of view versus uh, uh, a God point of view or a theistic point of view? To me, yeah, would be better off looking at it from a Christian perspective, because the Christian perspective asks us to love our fellow man like, like we love ourselves, or God has loved us, right? So to me, that is, and I obviously, when we start talking about love, right, this is where it gets really, really hairy and dirty and muddied and all this kind of stuff. Because what my kids think the way I should love them is to give them a whole bunch of money and tell them yes to everything, right? But I know better, and I'm like, well, no, that's not how I'm going to love you. We're all parents here, so you understand their meaning of love is way different than our meaning of love, and that's based on our experience, our wisdom, our knowledge, blah 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 blah. But yeah, to me, it is the ultimate question: is there a God? Is there no God? And how do we see the world through that lens? And obviously, to me, it's better to see that through a lens of there is a God, because then we put people, humans, whether they agree with us or not agree with us, we put them at the top. Because why? Because they are made in God's image. There's a hierarchy there. So yeah, if that makes sense. I mean, we can get into more of it, but that's kind of my overview of it.
Will?
My brother Sam, I'm going to have to disagree with you. Matt, stuff right here. Mac, your question was about the course of America and folding it. Like, what's the best solution? It is not Christianity. The founding fathers went out of their way to make this a secular nation. This is another myth, another fallacy that permeates out there. And this one actually pisses me off, that you ask people off the street, they're going to say, yeah, America is a Christian nation. And it absolutely is not. The founding fathers back in the 1780s, they knew, they were students of history. They were students of science. And they saw from history that if you mix religion and politics, or religion and government, that is the opposite of unifying, and that has been proven over and over and over and over and over again. And there was no America, so this is all European history, where they came from. The streets ran with rivers of blood, often and repeatedly, with that combination of government and religion. So they went out of their way to make this a secular nation, and there's a lot of thoughts going on in my head. If they were God-fearing men, if they really wanted this to be a Christian nation, it would have been plastered all over the Constitution. God this, Jesus that. But what you notice, if you really get into it, is the lack of mention of God, of Jesus. They knew the danger of mixing government and religion. So the American Constitution was actually the first to separate state and church. It was a first in the world. It was a uniquely American invention. And that's why they call it, one of the reasons they called it an American experiment, is that separation. And again, they went through great pains to do that. And they would be rolling over in their grave with the efforts of people to try to smash that wall between church and state. And Christian nationalism is actually one of the biggest dangers to democracy now. So I'm not going to sit here and predict the future, but if they had it their way, they being the Christian nationalists, they're trying to codify their version of Christianity into law to make this a Christian nation. And it's not all Christians. It's going to be their brand of Christian. And whoever is not in that particular sect of Christianity that they agree with is going to be oppressed. All right. Just think what they will do to LGBTQ people, people of other religions, not Christians. The list goes on and on. I'm not going to say it's going to be all 100% dystopian, but if given full reins of this country, we wouldn't be able to do this podcast. I mean, it would be an extreme danger to democracy. So the solution lies in secularism, right? We have to, that wall between state and church has to be there, and it has to be strong. It has to be understood by our citizens. That last part is the hardest part, because to reverse these myths out there, it's going to take a generation. But as far as I'm concerned, that's the way to go as far as creating unity in this country, creating any semblance of peace. And we can still get, I get what you're saying, Sam. It's like Jesus teaches to love everyone. It's not, I don't think it's quite that inclusive. Even Jesus's teachings only related to people that follow Jesus, and everyone else, I think there was a description of dogs, or why waste miracles on dogs. I mean, it's written, I forget where it is in the Bible, but it's not as inclusive as people think. And in a country such as ours, where there are multiple ethnicities and religions or sexual orientations, it's a mishmash. We need to have secularism binding us together. It cannot be religion. Religion is the opposite of unity, and that's my take.
Right. So, well, I don't know if you need to move on or you stay on that.
Well, if you want to say something, I was going to move on. But
right. So, I knew I had a feeling. I knew the wall, the separation between church and state. I think that's really been
overstated.
Well, it's actually misguided, because a lot of people think it's the government was trying to remove church out of the public. Actually, that, when it was written by Jefferson, if you really go back and look at the actual documents, it was actually, the purpose of the separation was always to protect the church from the interference by government. It wasn't government trying to take the Christianity or religion out of the public. It was actually protecting the church from government interference. Mm-hmm. And so the one thing that, when it happened, and I think it was in the courts, like in that late 1800s, and when the Supreme Court said, well, okay, that's true, but the only time that the government can interfere was, and they had certain couple of stipulations. I think I was looking it up. It was like incest, child sacrifice, infanticide, and what. So when those happened, yes, the government can interfere with the church, and I think that was the only. I don't want to say loophole, but that was the only time that they could do that. But the whole thing with Jefferson saying the wall of separation between church and state was actually to protect the church from the government, not the other way around.
So I have a different take on that. I agree that it gets overstated and understated depending on who's talking, right? If it's a secular person, they highlight the separation of church and state, even though that is more of a colloquialism than an edict. And then on the other side, they highlight how Christian we are. And Sam just kind of highlighted a possible theory of why there was separation of church and state. And I think they get overstated and understated depending on what perspective you have. My thought is that I think they were absolutely committed to not having tyranny. And one part of the tyranny of the English government was the emphasis of the church and how much power the church held over the government. And in order to avoid that tyranny, they were smart enough to explicitly allow freedom of religious expression, but to highlight the fact that they did not want the church to have control over government versus the other way around. Now, those are both opinions. That's my thoughts, and I have heard your take on it before, and I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I'm not saying you're incorrect. I'm not saying I'm correct. I'm just saying that that's kind of a different take on it. And I find that depending on whoever you talk to, the separation of church and state gets tossed around just based on what you're trying to accomplish. I'm not saying that happened with you guys. I'm just saying in general.
Right. And, and I think, we look at that, and I know that gets brought up a lot, we could definitely bring up like what was done in the name of religion. We could also bring up what was done in the name of, communism, secularism, all this stuff. I guess my point in saying all of this is I know. So I'm not going to sit here and negate what has happened, in the past with religion and bloodshed and all this kind of stuff. But if you really look at it, you could look at that and say, okay, that's true, but it's inconsistent with what Christ Jesus has taught, right? So yes, it's happened, and yes, we know it's bad, but it's inconsistent. On the other hand, when you have, communism killing hundreds of millions of people, right, in the 20th century, it's like, well, you can't say that's not consistent because there is no that standard, whichever that standard is, because if these guys think, well, okay, these guys are no good, then there's no good. That's their humanist. That is their way of thinking of like, hey, you know what? Let's make the perfect human race, or this or that or the other, or these guys are no good, or whatever the case, right? So I guess I go back to, are you living consistently in what you believe? And so as soon as I say that, then you're like, then we could easily say, well, Christians are hypocrites. I'd be the first one to tell you 100% of Christians are hypocrites, 100% of them, right? I would also go further and say 100% of people are also hypocrites because we all have standards. And guess what? You've never held that standard to 100%.
Well, speaking on that, you actually just led us right into our next question, our next topic, right? I know you probably had something to say about that, Will, but I want to kind of move on so we're not here all night. So, and this is going to be a question to you. I'll have other questions for Will, but Sam, this is a question that's probably going to be posed towards you because you are the quote unquote believer in the group.
Sure.
Would you say that it is hypocrisy for those people who call themselves believers to be Donald Trump supporters? And I'm gonna list some stuff because I have pretty strong feelings about this, and I just want to kind of make it as cogent as I can because I'm kind of flabbergasted about some of the stuff. But the fact that we know that he's a classic American racist because he was convicted of that stuff. Donald Trump is who I'm talking about. He was convicted of being racist in his businesses in the 70s by the Department of Justice. So we know that he has those views, right? He's kind of encouraged white supremacists during his presidency. He lied about COVID in a way that, in my opinion, cost untold numbers of lives, right? He basically said to the people that it was a Democratic hoax, and 2 days later, he's talking to a reporter saying that COVID is the worst thing since the Spanish flu, right? So he knew how bad it was. He just told the American people to save his economy that it wasn't that bad, which is, to me, is unbelievable. Also, he cheated on his wife when he was pregnant and paid off the hookers as a result of, or the porn stars. And I don't know if you feel like this, Sam, but I believe he's a pathological liar. I think the evidence shows that. And then he broke tons and tons of laws even while he was president. So with and there's many more things. That's just some of the things. With that, do you believe that it is hypocrisy? And you just kind of like stole my freaking thunder, dude. Why'd you do that? But you stole my thunder. But yeah, do you think it's hypocrisy for these people who call themselves believers to support Donald Trump as a president?
Yeah. So, I mean, that is such a, it's, okay. So So a couple of things. I mean, whether you like Trump or not, whether you agree with what you said or not, I'm sure I can, you give me 20 minutes, I can find all the rebuttals to all that kind of stuff that you said, right? It just depends what you're looking at, what you want to hear, right?
No,
Having said that,
because I specifically chose things that you really like. They're fairly factual. Like the stuff that I chose to put on there,
right?
Is documented.
Right.
Like it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So I heard about the whole racism back in those, back in 1971 or whenever it was.
Yeah.
And I was reading something about that, and it contradicted that narrative. However, I don't know enough, to be honest with you, so I'm not going to sit here and debate that. That's not.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really the crux of the argument. The essence of the question, because here's my thing is, then if it's Trump, if it's Obama, if it's Biden, it doesn't matter. These guys are politicians. These are human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't put my trust in human beings. So that's not what I'm putting my trust in. Now, do I like some of the things that he passed? Sure. Do I like him as a person? And do I think what he's done is right? No. But I also know he's a human being. I know he's corrupt and sinful. So I expect that. Now, if you're going to call me a hypocrite for that, that's fine. I've been a hypocrite 10 times over for other things. And that's not the point. To me, that's not the point, because I understand all my Christian brethren are hypocrites. We all are hypocrites because the standard is perfection. And we try to hold to that standard. So in that essence, we are hypocrites. We don't follow what we say every day. And I think that's why we get a bad rep, because our standard is in the public eye. You can go right now, read a Bible and say, oh, okay, I know what he's supposed to do. With a non-Christian person, what is their standard? It is hidden, right? It is hidden, because if I see someone who's not a Christian doing something, like, well, that's not my standard, so I'm not a hypocrite. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now, to answer your question, if you are a Bible believing Christian person and you think Trump walks on water, then yes, my answer to you is, yeah, you are a hypocrite. You probably shouldn't be doing that. Does that make sense? But I think most, and I know you don't like this, smart, well-read, reasoned, wise, Bible-believing, Christ-following people will probably give you somewhat of a similar answer. Like, we know he's a human. We know he's corrupt. We know he's fallen. We know he's morally bankrupt, just like everyone else, just like all the other politicians before him, and just like all the politicians after him. Trump is nothing special to me. He was never special to me before. He's nothing special to me after. And yeah, I don't put my trust in him. He did some good things. He did some bad things. It all depends, how you look at it. But I'm not going to sit here and completely dog cuss him. And then I'm not going to completely elevate him to, like, some of these guys, right? The never Trumpers, as they call them. I'm not one of those people. I can call when he's done something good. Hey, that's good. When he's done something bad, dude, get off of Twitter. Quit saying something so stupid. Be a presidential candidate, right? Be, yeah. Anyways, be regal, whatever that means. But I think that's where I stand. I don't know if that's my short, long answer.
Well,
yeah,
does that makes sense to y'all. I mean, again, it's, and I've talked to a ton of people, at my church or people that we kind of believe in, really they echo the same sentiment, to be honest with you.
Well, Sam, you said, what did you say? That Donald Trump is nothing special to you, but for the evangelical Christians, he is. I'm going to throw out numbers. All right. This is just off this, me making numbers up, but I'm sure they correlate to reality some. So evangelical Christians voted for Obama, let's just say 35%, voted for Trump 92%, and then voted for Biden 50%.
Right.
All right. So they think Trump is something special. Now, is it Trump? Is it just the Republican Party? So you start to have to concede that there's something going on that is not morals. That is not
right. But I think I understand what you're saying, right? And let's say those numbers are true. I think that's not fair to the individuals who voted for those. Let's say, like, I'll say it, I voted for Trump, right?
Mhm.
But and I hope you guys talking to me, you wouldn't say, oh, look at that guy, blah 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 blah. My whole thing is, was it like, oh yeah, go Trump, like that's the second coming of Jesus? No, I'm like, well, I don't want to vote for this person because I don't agree with her social whatever she's going to pass, right? Social, her way of ideology, her thinking. His was close. It's not perfect, but it's closer to what I want it to be. Is it perfect? No. Is he a perfect candidate? No. So I don't like. I think that is, to be honest with you, I think it's unfair for. I want to say, non-evangelical people or non-Christian people to say, well, look, evangelicals voted for him. How dare they? These Christian people are horrible, terrible people. I don't think that's fair because, again, we can go in, and we can have another podcast about this, but I can go in and tell you, like, he passed certain, he did certain things that as a Christian, as a Bible believing people that we actually like, right? He put, we can go through it. I don't want to, because then it gets to be into a political realm, and I don't want to get into that. But I'm just saying that he got voted for because he spoke a little bit to that base, and that base says, you know what, we like that. Yes, we don't agree with 60%, 70% of what you are and what you've done and whatever, but these things we hold true, and we see that in the long term, in the next generation or two, they're going to have a long lasting effect. That's what we want. And so, yeah, you can look at that whole and just gasp at that. But then if you talk to each individual person, like we're doing right now, you can say, okay, well, yeah, this was not like an easy decision, but there's no perfect candidate for us, right? Just like for a secular humanist, there's not going to be a perfect candidate. So if there's not a perfect candidate, we have to take what's in front of us. And you have to pick, I guess, the lesser of two evils, if you want to say. But I mean, that's the best way I could explain it, to be honest with you. And so I don't want to like do broad strokes of just saying, okay, well, these events. Yeah, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but
yeah,
if that makes sense.
Will, I mean, you go, and then I want to kind of touch on a couple of those things real quick.
Go ahead. I don't have a lot to add to that.
Okay. So, one of the problems that I have, with what you said was that he put some things in place that are kind of long-term going to help the people who are quote unquote believers. And I suspect you're talking about the Supreme Court. Is that what was in your brain?
That's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I suspect that was a main one. Now, my problem with that is that he ran against 16 other candidates that have records with respect to their political beliefs, whereas Donald Trump was all over the map, didn't have any political beliefs to speak of ever, and just said what he needed to say in any situation. People knew he was a pathological liar when he was elected. So there was no real understanding that he would be committed to doing any of the things that he said, because I saw him literally, and this is like literal, he flip-flopped on abortion 4 times in one day, which as a Christian would be one of the central things that you would believe in, right? So that's the first thing. There was no reason to believe that he would actually do any of the things he said he would do because of his history. The second thing is that there were, most of the candidates that he ran against were religious and had a history of religion. He doesn't. He never was. Can't even hold a Bible upright and can't even say a scripture. So there was no reason to believe that any of those candidates that were on that stage wouldn't have done exactly the same thing that he did with respect to Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, I think it's extraordinarily likely that any of them would have done the exact same thing had the court seats came up. Thirdly, Donald Trump is a clear, in my opinion, presentation of the flaws of having this thought that there is a higher power or being. Because if I was an alien and I came down and I was like, wow, these people are believers in these precepts. They're this is the belief that you should be kind to your neighbor and not covet the neighbor's wife, and all the 10 commandments, right? Not have false gods. And I was this alien being, and I came down, and this is what people told me they believed, and then I saw what was performed with respect to the one guy that represents everybody in this country. They voted for this guy, and he exhibited absolutely none of those principles. Zero. I mean, morality, if you believe in the concept of morality, he has basically none. Biblically, he's never had a history of believing in God or showing that or going to church on a regular, any of that, right? I mean, all of the left-leaning guys absolutely did, right? Clinton, even, Obama, all of them, even George Bush, right? They all had history. He had none. So what it points out to me is that religion, and it has been historically, it just shows that humankind will use religion for whatever ends it deems necessary to get the objective goal. And I don't think that the objective had anything to do with, I don't want to get into politics either, but to me, and you can see how strongly I feel about this particular issue, because it was the offenses against anything kind of Christian and religious are so egregious. You said get off Twitter. Well, we kind of want to know what the president thinks. Just because he's off Twitter doesn't mean he doesn't think the stuff that he's saying. So
right, but you really, to be honest with you, and I hope I'm not sounding like I'm flip-flopping, but you're really making my case, man. He's a broken, flawed human being. And any Christian would tell you that. Any Christ follower would tell you that. Like, I'm gonna give you all that stuff.
So, did you say Obama was a broken and flawed human being?
But I don't know him, right? So I can't.
You don't know Trump either. You don't know.
I don't know, but the thing is, I would tell you, we are all broken, flawed human beings. So that's a blanket statement. So here's the thing: I could only tell you. You look at these NBA players, right? So let's just get off. You look at these guys, and we only know them for what? The 15 minutes, an hour that we see, or some of the stuff. We don't know what's going on in their minds and hearts.
But you absolutely knew. Trump was so visible that you knew pretty much what was going on in his brain almost all the time.
Right, but I was looking at policies, right? So you look at policies. I'm not looking at the character. I could agree with you, and this guy's character is flawed, just like almost everyone living on this planet. Their character is flawed.
So no one is perfect. So President Obama, his character was flawed?
Yes. Of course. You're telling. So to me, I'm not going to.
I'm not saying that because he's black. I'm just saying that because of his history, like what he's shown.
Pick whoever. He's flawed. He's a flawed human being. Here's my standard. But here's the thing: my standard is what? It's Christ Jesus. So there's the thing. I would say he's flawed.
So then, if we're talking about, so now we're talking about grades of flawed, then, right? So you have to make an assessment on how on a grade of being flawed, right? So now you can, because you're kind of making it a little more gray. So we'll muddle it up a little bit.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we're all flawed.
Yeah.
You're the one who's bringing the gray in there. I'm just saying we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. Obama's flawed. Trump is flawed. I'm flawed. Lincoln was flawed. The next president will be flawed. Biden's flawed.
So then there's no point of voting for anybody. So basically what you're saying is that as a Christian, it doesn't matter who you vote for because everybody's flawed. Is that what you're telling me?
That's not what I'm saying. See, I think you're trying to. it seems to me that you're trying to paint Trump in a certain way. And if you're saying, look, if he's this guy, if he's this, bad character, how could you as a Christian vote for him? Right. And my whole thing is, I agree, his character is flawed. I'm giving you that. I'm telling you, and I'm agreeing with you, his character is flawed. We're looking at certain policies that he was trying to pass that are close to what Christians or conservatives want. That's about it. Again, it's like we're picking at straw. I feel like we're nitpicking because I'm agreeing with you, man. It's like these guys, none of these guys are perfect. They're all politicians. Yeah. I don't care for Biden. I don't care for Trump. I don't care for Barack. I don't care for any of those guys because they're politicians. They're flawed and they're not working. I mean, they're just, they're politics, right? They're politicians.
There's the rub. Let's just stop talking about, for this sake of this argument.
Right.
I don't agree with everyone's the same kind of flawed. I think there are grades, but let's just throw that aside. It's all policy. So Trump versus Hillary Clinton, Sam would much rather have a world that Trump's policies influence or make versus the policies that Clinton would enact to make society. The society that Clinton wants to paint, Sam likes a lot less, whatever, than a world that Trump can mold with his policies. Is that
basically it? Yeah, I mean, it's about.
I hear that. I still have a problem with it because he voted for Trump not knowing what he was going to do. And if you looked at what Trump had done in the past, he was a pathological liar before he got elected. He was cheating on wives before he got elected. He wasn't church going before he got elected. He flip-flopped on tons of policies before he got elected. He was right, then he was left, then he was right, then he was left when it suited his fancy. So my point isn't that the policies that he thought he might do, it's that he had no reason to even believe that he would do any of that stuff when he voted for him the first time and the second time.
But the thing is, if I voted for him for a particular reason and that particular reason came to fruition, can you really say that? He did appoint Supreme Court justices that are conservative, that are constitutionalist, right? And so it's like, that's really what I wanted.
Is there any
really what I got? Now, did he do everything that I wanted? Not really. But what politicians has done that?
Well, no politician had 3 justices come up, even though they said that they weren't.
No, that's not the point. And I'm talking about the justice. I'm just saying, what politician has fulfilled 100% of what he promised?
None. Not even close. Even Trump. I mean, there was nothing.
I agree.
Yeah. So
I think we're agreeing on a lot of things.
My point is that there were 16 other candidates that actually exhibited way more close to your Christian philosophy, and they didn't have this history of being super flawed morally. Like, there's no false equivalent here. Like Trump is the most flawed behavior-wise person that we've ever seen in that office. I think we would all agree with that, correct? Yes, no?
We're all flawed. That's my statement.
Okay. All right. So moving right along. Will, this question is to you. If God is unscientific or doesn't exist, why do all types of scientists, secular and religious, happen to believe or believe in religion? So I'll leave it there. I don't know if I asked that question as well as I could have, but I think you get the gist of it.
Yeah. Why are there religious scientists?
No, it's just that, a question that's been posed to me is that people have this belief that God doesn't exist. And, a lot of people say that it's incompatible. I'm one of them. I think that religion is incompatible with science because of the scientific method. But it's been posed to me the question that, well, if that's the case, if God doesn't exist, if it's unscientific, then why are there all these scientists, that people that are, in the fields of study, in the fields of science, that practice the scientific method, that still believe in God? I hope that helps. I hope that clears it up.
Yeah, they are human, right? As humans, I didn't know you studied some psychology. I've been reading a lot of social psychology stuff in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
But the need to please the in group, the need to belong to an in group is absolutely, it's almost hardwired in us as human beings. So, and this is regardless of any type of facts that may come along. And let me explain that better. So let's just say I'm a scientist, and you're right, scientific method, I'm cracking the codes of string theory or astrophysics, learning more and more about science using the scientific method.
Mm-hmm.
All super sciencey, and as you say, if religion and science are incompatible, then the more I'm going into science, it would make sense that you'd be going more and more away from religion if what you say is true.
Mm-hmm.
So I easily see how that won't happen in a lot of people, scientists, because scientists are human. So from an early age, we're indoctrinated into what our parents believe, right? These core beliefs are built when we're very young, and they're protected at all costs by our reptilian parts of our brain, our amygdala. So if these scientists were kids, right? They grew up in normal households a lot of times, and a good portion of them, I would say most of them, grew up religious. So even though you're a scientist, even though you're cracking the codes of string theory, this core belief is still there, and it takes a lot to change that core belief, or to give up part of that core belief. And you cannot expect, just because you're cracking codes of string theory means that that this scientist is going to give up his or her core belief. It really is that hard to do. So when you confront a core belief with facts and science, we would think should rule the day, but a lot of times it doesn't, and it doesn't because we're humans.
Sam, anything?
So I've always wondered about this, like whether it's scientists or not scientists. That's actually, and well, you could probably recommend some books for me, because here lately I've been thinking about this, how after seeing tons of debates and this and that, you have all kinds of people looking at the same data, right? And they come to different conclusions. One becomes an atheist, one becomes a theist, right? Then you have people that were atheists become theists, and vice versa. And you have all kinds of intellectual levels, social levels, economic levels, right? They're all on both sides, and few crisscross, and they're all looking at the same data. I would hope they're all looking at the same data. And I'm like, why do we come to such opposite conclusions? And I really don't know why. I don't know why. I could sit here and give some flippant answer, but that would be probably my next thing of really trying to understand. And I don't know if it's going to be able to do some broad brushstroke versus taking the individual circumstance. But it's always been interesting to me, after doing this now for a lot of years. It's like, why do people look at the same data, same information, same evidence, and come to a separate conclusion, a different conclusion?
It kind of depends. Let me say something real quick, Macalicious. It kind of depends on what you're looking at. So, for instance, if you and I are looking at the sun, and I say, "Hey, that's nuclear fusion going on in there," and you say, "No, that's a big pile of wood burning," back in the 1300s, it couldn't be proven. We just shrug and say, "Oh, we don't know." But fast forward, science is this thing. We now know it's nuclear fusion and not a big pile of burning wood. If we're in the 1500s and we see a lightning bolt, if you say, "Hey, that's an electric discharge from sky to ground," and I say, "Well, that's an angel, mad, the wrath of the gods," we'd shrug. We don't know. But then fast forward, science does this thing. We understand that you were right. It's an electrical discharge. So those are more objective things that in the past were unknown and now are known. And that trend continues as science moves forward. That unknown area where supernatural beliefs exist shrinks and shrinks. So I don't want to say that, oh man, now we're talking about, does God exist? We're never going to know that. There's never going to be any evidence. Man, they didn't think we'd ever know what stars were made of, or that we'd land on the moon. So I don't think it's impossible to know that. I think it's going to take a while, but that's why I'm saying you look at two separate things of data and come up with two separate answers. Maybe it's just because we just aren't there yet. We don't know.
Right. But I like, when you look at the current data, right? So you see these debates, right? And so you see these guys look at these different arguments, right? Whether it's the cosmological argument, the moral argument, fine-tuning argument, how non-matter came from matter, abiogenesis, evolution versus non-evolution, whatever, right? They look at all the data. They're looking all the same scientific data, right? And again, you have these, not me, right? But you have these super uber smart people that are debating on
you are super uber smart now.
Say that again.
You are super uber smart.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But you look at that and you're like, they're seeing the same data, and yet they come to a completely different conclusion. And I don't know why that astonishes me. I don't know. Like, again, I really want to get to, I think there's something there. I don't know what it is. But I think that is where we should be going towards. Yes, new data is going to come up, and science is going to change. Like, we're going to find out new things and more awesome things and blah, blah, blah. And people could use that for like, oh, wow, look, that is good evidence for God. And they're like, no, that's not good evidence for God. And so it's like, why? Right? Because that's always going to be the case, right? Even if we come up with, science is going to come up with more fun stuff, more awesome stuff, more discoveries that people on either side will actually either solidify their position, or actually sometimes we'll make them, very few times they'll make them flip-flop, right? But it's like,
we'll get there, man. We'll get there. Just the sun example, right? There's no argument that nuclear fusion happens in the sun, right? So you'd be hard pressed to find anyone now that still believes that it's a big pile of wood burning. So it's accepted science. Evolution is accepted science, as accepted as gravity. So I think the time will come. We'll get there. We're not there yet. So, and I'm comfortable saying I don't know. I just do not know. I don't have the evidence. So I'm agnostic, like my friend Macalaka.
Well, gentlemen, I had some other questions, but in the interest of time, we're going to forego those because you guys have been so gracious to come on here and kind of expose yourselves and put yourselves out there. And I really super appreciate it, man. You guys don't know how much. And I have so much respect for both you dudes, man. Now, the questions that I had left over were related to health and healthcare system, and I would love to have you two dudes back so we can chop it up about those topics, because both you guys have fantastic commitment to health and healthcare and ideas that I think the public would benefit from. And if you guys kind of let me or permit me to invite you guys back to talk about those things, it would be awesome.
I'm in.
Yeah, good.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
So with respect to this topic, parting shots, I'm going to give each Sam, Will, and then I'll have a parting shot with my ideas about this particular topic, and then we'll cut it down.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to do like this final speech. You know what? I love this stuff. I love the fact that we can just sit here, share ideas, discuss ideas, and at the end of the day, we can still go out and have a beer. Like that's what I've always wanted. You know, I think that's what we're supposed to do, right? That's us having just an open, honest conversation and just really understanding each other, instead of just saying, oh, well, you're an atheist and I'm a Christian, so therefore you should believe this, or, you know, you're a Christian, you believe this way, you're an atheist, you believe this way. And I just think knowing the person, getting to understand and know Will, getting to understand and know you, Mac, is to me way more than, well, Mac is an agnostic and Will is a self-professed atheist. That to me is just, I think, you know, you see that on the internet and it's just, it's hogwash. But so I appreciate y'all giving me the time just to kind of even just get to know you guys a little bit more.
Will?
Yeah, for me, yes, I'm an atheist. I'm also a secular humanist. I just want to make this world a better place. Like, for instance, when I volunteer at the food bank, I'm there on the line working hard. I'm shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow with a lot of different people, Christians, Hindus, whatever, and I'm proud. I mean, it fills my Black atheist heart with joy to be on that line with those people, making this world a better place. So that's my goal. At the end of my life, I want to smile and say I've left it a better place. Really, my goals are to decrease suffering, increase justice, increase well-being for as many people as possible. So that's what drives me. And and that's it. Again, I'm not anti-religion. If you are a believer and you're not hurting anyone, man, I would go out in the streets and fight for your right to hold your beliefs in this country, along with all the other beliefs. Absolutely. But I do not want that belief to hurt other people in this country. And that's what I push back against.
Awesome. You and I have similar beliefs about that, Will. I think that, I think that it's more likely that man created religion than the other way around, God creating man, and vastly more likely. And I do believe that religion is incompatible with truly operating the scientific method, because there are steps in the scientific method that you can't get past with religious observations. And I also do believe that, believing in a religion is a philosophy, but it's a philosophy of ignorance, like trying to explain what you don't know versus seeking out what you do. Now, with that said, if you are a believer and in believing you are better to your fellow man than you would be without it, then that's exactly what I want you to do, because ultimately I want this world to be a better place. Now, I'm going to throw something out there as a kind of a parting shot. I think that if everybody dispensed with any organized religion and just operated based on the golden rule, and I know that sounds freaking simple, but I feel like the world would have already been a ton better place, because it's so much harder to manipulate the golden rule than it is organized religion. Outside of that, I will leave it there. Gentlemen, again, fantastic talk. I think that you guys are awesome, and I wouldn't have you on if I didn't have the greatest amount of respect for you guys. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can have another discussion regarding healthcare in the near future.
Thank you.
I love it, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome,
Yeah,
guys.
take care.
Yep.